Have you ever felt like you're working incredibly hard towards a goal, putting in all the effort, but there's just this invisible ceiling, like something you can't quite pinpoint is holding you back?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That feeling is something so many people run into, and it often points towards those really powerful undercurrents, our subconscious beliefs.
Right.
And that's exactly what our deep dive is focusing on today, understanding, maybe starting to navigate those hidden obstacles that stop us getting what we really desire.
Exactly. And the core idea, the real insight from the sources you shared, seems to be this. Manifesting what we want isn't, well, it's not just about the conscious positive thoughts we try to have.
No, not at all.
It's actually rooted way deeper, isn't it, in our subconscious feelings about whether we're actually worthy.
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
Think about it. Research suggests what only about 5% of our cognitive activity is conscious, the part we're actually aware of.
Just 5%.
Wow. Yeah, tiny. The other 95%, that's the huge influential realm of our subconscious. It shapes our thoughts, reactions, decisions, even our ingrained habits. So it kind of follows that this massive subconscious part has a huge say in the reality we experience.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more for you listening. So if that's the playing field, what's our main mission for this deep dive, especially since you've done some homework on this already with your sources?
Well, our mission is really to identify what your sources call the greatest enemies of human potential, which are fear and doubt.
Fear and doubt, okay.
Yeah. We want to explore how they actually show up in our lives, how they manifest, and more importantly, dive into some practical, actionable ways to actually address them, clear the path towards what you really want.
So it's almost like these really deep-seated beliefs about whether we deserve something. They're the real puppet masters,
Yeah.
subtly pulling the strings on what we actually attract.
Precisely. Your sources are really clear on this. You can only truly manifest what you deeply, truly believe you're worthy of having. And lurking in that 95% subconscious zone, that's often where fear and doubt live, acting like these big roadblocks.
Hmm. And how do these fear and doubt gremlins, how do they usually show up? What do they actually look like day to
Oh,
day?
they wear many masks.
Oh,
It could be those nagging insecurities that just chip away at your confidence,
yeah.
or limiting beliefs you've carried, maybe without even realizing it for years. Those deep feelings of unworthiness, whispering you're not good enough, or even just a basic lack of trust that things will actually work out, that the universe has your back.
So it's like they're constantly feeding us these negative internal messages,
Right.
undermining our best efforts to be positive.
Exactly that.
Yep.
One of your sources asks a really sharp question. When you last visualized your ideal income, did you genuinely pick your absolute dream salary? Or did you kind of subconsciously maybe adjust it down to something that felt more, quote, realistic or achievable?
Mm-hmm.
That little adjustment, that's often fear and doubt in disguise.
Oh, that hits home. It's like fear and doubt pretend they're being helpful, right? Trying to protect us from disappointment.
It's a key insight from
Yeah.
the material, yeah. They masquerade as these protective friends, supposedly shielding us from the pain if things don't work out.
Hmm.
But what they're actually doing is stopping us from tapping into the abundance and possibilities
Mhm.
that are genuinely there for us.
And this links into things like vision boards too, doesn't it? Have you ever had that moment wanting to put a really big dream on there, but then that little voice pops up like, oh, what's the point? That'll never happen.
Yes. Your source material talks about exactly that. Limiting beliefs can stop us from even fully allowing ourselves to visualize what we want, because we've already told ourselves subconsciously, nope, not for me, that's out of reach. There's a story about Leah working on her vision board, and she kept holding back.
Ah.
She actually said she just wanted to be realistic and didn't want to put certain things on in case it didn't happen. She was actively avoiding her deepest desires because she was scared they wouldn't come true.
Wow, that sounds incredibly familiar. I really remember my first 5-year vision board. I was just hit by this huge wave of resistance, this self-doubt.
Yeah.
I had this deep dream, this passion to deliver self-development workshops to thousands, like really empower people on a big scale. But when it came to actually putting that on the board, I just froze.
Ah.
The sheer embarrassment of even writing it down, plus this intense fear, what if it never happens? It was so strong, I couldn't even let myself think it was possible.
See, that vulnerability, that hesitation you felt, that perfectly illustrates what your sources are getting at. When we become aware of those moments, those specific fears that pop up during something like vision boarding,
Yeah.
that's actually our opportunity.
An opportunity, how so?
It's the chance to start the real work, the healing work, to eventually remove them.
So just giving ourselves full permission to dream, like one source says, That act itself helps bring these hidden fears out into the open.
Absolutely. It's like shining a torch into the dusty corners of our subconscious. Your sources encourage you. Revisit your vision board, if you have one, or just mentally create one right now. No limits. None at all. And just notice what comes up. What are those feelings? Disbelief? That's not for me. Unworthiness? Just notice them.
Okay, so the first big step is really just awareness, becoming conscious of these fear patterns.
Right.
But the sources keep hammering home this idea of worthiness. Why is that belief so absolutely critical?
Well, your source material puts it really bluntly. To manifest anything into your life, you must believe you are worthy of having it. He repeats it for emphasis.
Yeah.
That deep-rooted belief in your inherent deservingness. That's the bedrock. That's the foundation manifestation is built on. Without it, fear and doubt will always find a way to undermine you, no matter how hard you try consciously.
Can you give like a concrete example? How does not feeling worthy actually block something?
Sure. One source uses the example of an artist. Let's say they really want to sell their work. They might be incredibly talented. Maybe they could even visualize their art in a fancy gallery.
Okay.
But if deep down, they don't fundamentally believe they deserve that success, if there's a subconscious belief their work isn't really good enough, or they aren't worthy of that recognition, that lack of worthiness acts like a huge energetic brake. It hinders them manifesting those sales.
Right. Okay. So it always comes back to fear and doubt blocking things, which means the first job, the inner work, is spotting them and dealing with them.
Exactly. Your sources call it self-development in action.
Yeah.
It's more than just thinking positive thoughts. It's digging into those ingrained beliefs. And importantly, the material points out this isn't a one-and-done thing.
Ah, right. It's ongoing.
Yeah, it's a journey. Some beliefs are easier to shift than others, especially the really deep-rooted ones.
Because these limiting beliefs, these insecurities, they don't just appear out of nowhere, do they? They come from somewhere.
No, they usually build up from childhood onwards.
Yeah.
Shaped by messages we receive, things we experience, stuff we went through, they get embedded in our conscious mind, but even more powerfully in the subconscious. That's why your sources stress that removing fear and doubt is often something you revisit as you go deeper on your manifesting path, uncovering new layers.
Okay, we keep using this term limiting beliefs. Can we nail down a clear definition? What exactly is one?
Yeah, good question. As your source material defines it, a limiting belief is basically a thought you've repeated to yourself so often it becomes automatic, like an unconscious program running in the background.
Okay.
And these ingrained beliefs then shape your behavior. When a belief actively holds you back from what you want or what you're capable of, that's when we call it a limiting belief.
One source gives that really powerful example, a child being told repeatedly, we are unlovable, and how that one belief can then just ripple out and shape all kinds of relationship choices and patterns later on.
Exactly. And it's important to remember these beliefs can form any time, childhood, teenage years, even as adults, based on significant experiences or narratives we tell ourselves over and over.
This whole thing about fear and doubt, it really hits home for me personally. Even before I knew about manifesting, I was just drowning in insecurity. That self-loathing the source mentions, it was everywhere in my life. I knew I had that inner critic, but looking back now, I see how deep it went, tied to past stuff, subconscious memories I couldn't even access then.
Well, your experience really highlights that core principle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That removing fear and doubt is this profound, ongoing journey.
Yeah.
Your sources echo that needing constant awareness of your thoughts and then actively taking steps to heal the underlying stuff.
One of my biggest limiting beliefs was feeling I could never be truly successful myself, like on my own terms. I had this deep down idea I needed a man for financial stability. It sounds almost embarrassing now, but growing up, that was a story I'd somehow absorbed, that I wasn't smart enough or capable enough to build my own successful career.
Yeah. And your sources mention how our circumstances can sometimes accidentally reinforce these beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So being in that relationship with this successful man early on, while maybe seeming good at the time, it kind of confirmed that underlying belief that you needed someone else to provide for you.
Totally. I put so much of my self-worth, my security into that relationship without realizing it. And when it ended, I was devastated, lost my identity completely.
Wow.
Looking back, I see this pattern. Using relationships for validation, for security. And guess what? During those years, I made basically no money myself. I had no direction, no motivation. The fear and doubt were just paralyzing me from even trying.
It's fascinating how Clearly, your story mirrors the principles in your source material.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned a big shift when you met Rovid.
Yes, that was completely different. A real equal partnership. Emotional support, yes, but also just freedom to be me. It wasn't about needing him for validation or to fix my insecurities. And in that supportive space, that's when I actually started building my own career. It was like suddenly I realized the only things ever holding me back from financial stability, from feeling validated in my own right, were those fears and doubts. The feeling I wasn't smart enough, wasn't worthy, plus maybe some societal stuff about women and career success. Once I consciously decided to heal those fears, my income went up tenfold in just a couple of years.
Wow, tenfold.
Yeah, it would be undeniable proof. The potential was always in me.
That's such a powerful personal example of exactly what we're talking about. So, okay, for you listening, wanting to break through your own invisible ceilings, how do you start identifying your own specific fears and doubts?
Well, the sources really stress the need for brutal honesty with yourself. You have to be willing to really look at the specific fears and doubts you have about the things you want to manifest.
Okay.
The material suggests asking yourself some really direct, maybe even uncomfortable questions.
And those questions are key, aren't they? What are they again? They are. Do I truly, deep down, believe I am worthy of having this? Second, do I genuinely trust I could handle it if I got it? Third, do I honestly believe this is possible for me? And finally, what specific insecurities do I currently have around this desire?
Those are potent.
They really are. And then the sources suggest a practical exercise. Visualize something you really want. Get it clear in your mind, then spend a few minutes just trying to spot the fears and doubts that bubble up immediately.
And actually write them down.
Yes, write them down, even if they seem totally irrational or silly. One source says, acknowledging each detail of your fear and doubt will only empower you to eventually let it go.
Right, bringing them out of the subconscious shadows.
Exactly. By shining that conscious light on them, you start taking away their hidden power.
Because those limiting beliefs, those insecurities you identify, that's the stuff acting as the barrier right now, preventing you from stepping into that better life. And the more aware you become.
The less unconscious control they have over your thoughts, your choices, your results.
Yeah.
Awareness is always the first step in any kind of self-development. Just identifying the beliefs starts the healing process.
Okay.
Your sources say, repeat this exercise for every big thing you want to manifest or anytime you feel stuck. And also, try to cultivate mindful observation day to day. Catch those little insecure thoughts as they pop up.
Okay, so we've identified the villains, fear and doubt.
Yeah.
Now, the really important part, how do we actually start removing them? The sources call this self-development in action, which I love.
Yes, it's about actively reclaiming that confidence, that worthiness we were all born with.
Yeah.
Your sources lay out 4 really powerful, practical techniques you can start using right away. Mastering your thoughts, watching your language, using mantras, and practicing visualization.
Let's dive into the first one, mastering thoughts. The sources start by saying, okay, the subconscious is powerful, but don't underestimate the ongoing impact of your conscious thoughts on your subconscious.
That's fundamental. As one source puts it, the subconscious mind obeys the conscious mind. Whatever thoughts we keep consciously focusing on, our subconscious eventually starts accepting as true.
Ah.
And this is where that inner critic often does its damage, feeding us those messages of not good enough, can't do it, all that self-doubt.
There's that interesting webinar exercise mentioned, asking people to say kind things to themselves, and most felt really awkward doing it, but saying negative things felt easier.
Right. It really shows how ingrained negative self-talk can become for so many of us. Maybe like your own experience with decades of self-criticism.
Yeah, definitely.
But the empowering part is knowing we have the conscious power to choose differently, to interrupt that pattern.
It's about deliberately choosing supportive, empowering thoughts, even if at first you don't fully believe them.
Exactly. The source gives examples like consciously thinking you are doing a great job or telling yourself firmly, you can absolutely achieve anything you set your mind to.
And the idea is the more we consciously choose these thoughts,
the more we influence those underlying subconscious beliefs. And that boosts our manifesting power. Because thoughts create emotions, right? And emotions have a vibration. Positive thoughts lead to higher vibes, which helps attract what we want.
plus, we can only really hold one thought at a time, so it becomes a practice of catching the negative ones and actively replacing them.
Precisely. One source throws out some pretty wild stats about how many thousands of thoughts we have daily and how many are negative and repetitive. It really underlines why consistent, intentional practice is needed.
So swapping thoughts like, what if it doesn't work out, To, okay, but what if it does work out amazingly?
Yes, or I'm not good enough becomes I am perfect exactly as I am. It's about not letting those negative thoughts just wander around unchallenged.
And another part of mastering thoughts is reframing perspective.
Yes, huge. We always have some choice in how we interpret a situation, no matter what it is.
Our perspective is shaped by our mood, expectations, past experiences, beliefs, self-worth, all sorts of things, right? That's why two people see the same event differently, like the restaurant or email examples in the source.
Exactly. So reframing is consciously choosing a viewpoint that serves you better. Your story about the article not getting published, that's a perfect reframe. Instead of my writing's bad, you chose other possibilities, which opened the door for it to get published later.
So when we catch ourselves interpreting things through fear and doubt, the question to ask is,
Well, what is another perspective I could choose right now? Something more positive, more constructive, like the dating example. Instead of assuming rejection if you don't hear back, what are the other possibilities? Maybe they're just busy, maybe something came up.
right, it all comes back to that core idea again.
We manifest what we believe we are worthy of. So becoming aware of our thoughts and actively choosing to replace the negative ones is fundamental to building that worthiness.
Okay, technique number 2, watch your language. How does the language we use inside our heads and out loud affect things?
Well, your sources stress that both our internal self-talk and the words we actually speak feed directly into our subconscious. If that language is mostly negative or critical, it just fuels fear and doubt.
But we can use language deliberately to help ourselves.
Absolutely. Strategically. The sources offer some practical ways. First,
Hmm.
ditch if when talking about goals, replace it with when.
Ah, okay. If I get the promotion versus when I get the promotion.
Exactly. If signals doubt, when signals certainty, expectation. It directs the subconscious differently.
The next tip is talking about what you do want, not what you don't want.
Yes, because focusing on the negative, even to say you don't want it, still makes the subconscious engage with that negative energy, lowering your vibe.
So instead of, I don't want to struggle financially anymore,
Reframe it. I am creating abundant financial freedom. Focus the energy on the positive outcome you desire.
and then there's making mindful swaps in everyday language,
Mhm.
replacing low vibe, low self-esteem phrases with high vibe ones.
Yeah, the source even gives that helpful table, swapping things like I can't do it with I can do anything I put my mind to. Small changes, big impact over time.
Like that client story about public speaking, changing their negative self-talk led to real improvement.
Exactly. It shows how changing your words can literally change your experience. It's about nourishing the subconscious with empowering language.
And the last point under language, learning to accept compliments. That one feels surprisingly tricky sometimes.
It does. Many of us deflect praise. But the sources say dismissing compliments can actually chip away at self-esteem, often from a fear of seeming arrogant.
So the advice is,
Practice just saying thank you. Sincerely. Being open to receiving praise helps shift those subconscious beliefs about deserving good things.
okay, moving to technique 3, use mantras. How do positive affirmations help with fear and doubt in manifesting?
Well, in this context, mantras are basically positive, affirming phrases you repeat consciously, like, I am worthy.
Simple but powerful.
Very. Repeating them sends positive messages to your subconscious, helping to overwrite those old negative thought patterns.
So it's like deliberate reprogramming, counteracting that inner critic, replacing you're not good enough with I am perfect exactly as I am.
Precisely. And incorporating them into your routine, morning, night, maybe during meditation, helps reprogram the subconscious consistently, even if it feels a bit silly at first, like the host mentioned experiencing.
Yeah, persistence pays off there.
Definitely. The sources suggest writing a mantra down where you'll see it, repeating it when you do, maybe changing it weekly to focus on different areas. There's a great list of ideas in the material. Just reading them can shift your energy.
And what about affirmation tracks, those audio loops?
Oh yeah, those are highlighted as really powerful. Listening to mantras set to music, especially when you're relaxed, falling asleep, waking up, meditating when your brain is more receptive, it can really help create new positive neural pathways.
Like overwriting old negative code.
Exactly. The host mentioned using them for 3 years straight, which says a lot. Sticking with one track helps condition the mind, and using goal-specific tracks can really focus your energy.
All right, the fourth and final technique, practice visualization. We talked about it for clarity, but how does it help specifically remove fear and doubt?
Your source material gives a really practical exercise, the evaporating ball visualization.
Okay, how does that work?
You use deep breathing. You visualize your fear and doubt as like a dark, heavy ball inside you. You let it grow as you focus on your insecurities.
Mm,
Then with each inhale, you imagine bright light streaming in, overpowering the darkness. With each exhale, you see the dark ball shrinking, until it completely evaporates. Then gently open your eyes.
that sounds really tangible, like you're actively dissolving the fear.
It is. And the sources point out it's super portable. You can do it anywhere, anytime doubt creeps in, even just for a moment.
There's that client story too, the newly married woman struggling with her inner critic. This visualization helped her find her voice.
Yes, it gave her enough power over the fear to start using other tools and eventually communicate effectively. Visualization can also be used another way, to actively reimagine worst-case scenarios into best-case ones.
Like changing the channel in your mind.
Exactly. If you're worried about failing an exam, instead of dwelling on that, you consciously visualize passing, getting the good news, feeling that success. Replay the ideal outcome.
So visualization is key for clarity, removing fear, imagining positive results, and raising your vibration.
Absolutely. The sources wrap it up by saying our mind is incredibly powerful. It can be the source of fear and doubt, but it's also the ultimate cure.
That brings it all together nicely. The source material summarizes fear and doubt as basically representing low self-worth, insecurities, limiting beliefs, all that stuff.
Right, and it repeats that removing them is ongoing, sometimes challenging work. It requires vulnerability, maybe looking back at tough experiences, but the reward is huge.
Definitely. And while these 4 techniques are great daily tools,
The sources also encourage exploring other self-development practices too, anything that resonates and helps build that core self-worth.
this has been incredibly insightful, really digging into these hidden blocks. So to quickly recap, what are the absolute key things for you listening to take away?
I'd say the main points are: your subconscious beliefs about your worthiness are driving your manifestation. Fear and doubt are the major roadblocks living in that subconscious space.
But we're not stuck.
Not at all. We have practical tools, mastering thoughts, watching language, using mantras, visualization that we can actively use to overcome these blocks and really step into our potential.
And it always starts with that honest self-awareness, right? Identifying the specific fears holding you back.
Absolutely. Which leads perfectly into our final thought for you today. Just take a moment now. Think about one specific fear or doubt that maybe came up for you during this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
What's one small, intentional step you could take today using one of these techniques we talked about, just to begin shifting that limiting belief, even a tiny step?
And definitely keep exploring your own sources, go deeper with these practices, and really trust in your own power to create the life you truly want and deserve.